Today's guest on the Pro Talk podcast. He's a guy I have great respect for since I've seen him in action. Want to welcome to the Pro Talk podcast, Mr. Chris Lane, actually known as Coach CJ, or I've always known him as CJ. So, Chris, how are you, man?
Feeling fantastic.
Good. So I guess it's okay to call you CJ?
100%. Since I was a kid, people gave me a little nickname, so I just go with that.
Is that Chris Jr. or where did that come from?
Christopher James, my first and middle name. That was it. So
Easy enough. Okay. All right. Well, you are the co-founder or co-owner, co-CEO and founder of Takeoff Performance here in Marietta, training athletes by athletes. So somebody says, hey, what the heck is Takeoff Performance? Is that going to teach me how to fly airplanes or run fast? So give us a little background on your business.
I would say a little bit of both. Some of the reason why we called it Takeoff was to get the details that goes into a plane flight or that will go into a rocket launch. A lot of the preparation, the training that goes before you just get to launch a rocket off. So it's kind of a play on, kind of our logo, which it happens to be a rocket in terms of the preparation, the time, the energy, effort, the teamwork that goes into getting a rocket to its destination. So we look at our athletes in that same way of, okay, what are the pieces that we need? Where is it that you're trying to go? And what is it going to take to get there? So, we work with athletes of all different skill levels, different sports, different backgrounds, different goals. Some kids are just trying to make teams. Some kids are trying to go pro, and some kids are just like, I've never done this sport before, and I'm looking to explore that. So we do span a range of experience levels.
So if somebody comes to you, they're not just getting a quicker 40-yard dash. You guys build a better athlete, so to speak.
100%. Now, if we put in a situation where I needed to do it on site and there was an athlete that needed to drop their 40 within, 10 to 15 minutes, I could give them some little pointers to say, hey, look, like maybe we could drop, a quarter of a second or, off your time if we do these things maybe today or tomorrow, whether it's flexibility, whether it's focus, whether it's explosiveness, technique, we can do that kind of in an immediate time frame. But as well, if we need something a little bit longer, saying, hey, look, like you're not where you want to be right now and you want to be there in 6 months, we can put a plan together at home, in person, and, in group training to get them there.
So when someone's let's say that I do want to get my 40 down. Okay. I'm a high school receiver. What's that take? Is that a 6 month, couple times a week, or what do you guys advise in a situation like that?
So normally we'll try to pick out when their testing date is and then reverse engineer the schedule from there. It is a combination of strength training, flexibility, as well as us getting the neurons in their brain to be able to fire fast enough to run that fast. So it is a mental component as well, because, when you're trying to run at full speed, like you can't really think. Mm-hmm. Like you don't have time to think if you're trying to run a 4.5 or a 4.6. That's such a blip of time. So in the training, we do try to teach each of the phases of the 40-yard dash from the start to the middle run and then the finish, kind of getting them up through there. So it does take between 3 and 6 weeks to get them where they want to go if I was going to put a time frame on it. So if it's, October and you have testing in, January, February, that's the perfect time, to give you, between 3 and 6 weeks to prepare. And then, just kind of getting your mind ready to compete at that level, knowing that you've got to be locked in days before with mental preparation, physical preparation, hydration, flexibility. So if you're running on Saturday, by Wednesday, you need to start to taper off and get your body ready to perform at that level. So, we teach kind of all those timeframes.
I remember Carl Lewis, when he was talking about his 40-yard dash, that I think he said by, here I am dating myself, it's 100 meters. But he said at the 60-meter mark, I think he said something about keeping his technique because it was a deceleration at that point. So no one's going top speed 0 to 100 meters. Is that correct?
Not at all. Which is the interesting thing about the 40 and the 100 and track runners versus football players versus short speed, long speed, and depending on the sport, right? So soccer players are much quicker than they are fast, right? And that's just in terms of like their 0 to 1 step. Like if you're standing in one spot and they saw the ball, like they can move there quicker than a lot of other sports can. Very similar to volleyball, where like you have 1 or 2 steps to make a move to the ball and that's it. And then you can get to like football or basketball where you're more in the 5 to 6 step to 10 step range, right? And then you got these longer sports that are like track and field and or softball, where like your minimum sprint is going to be 20 to 30 yards. So it really just depends on what you're trying to get done. But I would say deceleration starts to happen around 60 meters. So for most sprint sports, it's all about how fast can I get to my top speed and how efficient can I be when I get there, and or do I have to stop, turn? So it's definitely just cater to what it is that you need as an athlete.
Yeah. So like, let's say that it's okay, the Carl Lewises and those guys of the world, that's Olympic sprinters. Now let's look at your athlete that's a baseball player or a football player. So let's say I'm a 14-year-old kid and I need to get to first faster or a wide receiver. Are you guys looking to do more of a technique and strength, or is that all tied together on, what's going to get me that first quick step?
So I would say that technique is definitely a foundational piece, where if you don't have the technique, but you're really athletic, you can kind of get by to a certain level. And this is where they say like hard work beats talent or whatever it is. Like some people naturally can just sprint faster. But then when you get to the higher levels and I would say more elite speed, your technique is going to be what you fall on and what you rely on. So it's a combination of both, where we do try to address technique. But if there's an athlete that's deficient in power, speed, I would say acceleration, that needs to be addressed probably primarily, because you can have perfect technique, but if you just can't get the output, if you're running with a V4 engine versus V8s,
Yeah.
like it doesn't really matter if you have perfect technique and your motor works, but you definitely need to get the power aspect. So we do encourage strength training that's progressive in terms of starting with bodyweight movements, moving towards lightly resisted movement, and then moving towards some strength training mixed in there. That's really focused on the muscle groups that you need. So it is a progressive movement towards that, but I would say probably strength is 60 to 70% and technique is like 30%, like for an athlete that is slower. And then for the faster athletes, it's reversed, where you can do strength training, but really you need to work on your technique and the tiny details. So there is a shift that happens as you move within I would say within the spectrum.
Okay. That's cool. I remember I've taken several footwork courses or seen footwork experts at tennis seminars. And one guy asked a question. Well, first thing he said is that walking is a controlled fall. And he was talking about balance. And then the question, which I like to ask kids, is when you walk or do you run, do you step forward or you push back? And most kids will say, and adults, that you step forward. And this guy was showing us how by pushing off, and that's your acceleration. And that's so cool. I've watched you train people, that the wall thing where you go up and back and how much explosiveness you guys create.
Yeah, 100%. And nothing against anybody who's walking or running, but they always say you need to walk before you can run, right?
Yeah.
And if we can, kind of go to the basis, and I know you teach tennis and have for years, and I as you say, you used to watch me, I used to watch you teach, and used to always just have them get their body in the correct position and then kind of lean and push where they're wanting to go. So I just think that's so cool that, something as simple as walking correctly can fix a lot of things when it comes to performance, as well as, injuries and different things like that, because that's normally what happens in my realm is I'll get an athlete coming off an injury and or like trying to get back into the swing of things or push themselves. And I'm like, look, we can, but like you need to fix these technical aspects or you're not going to be able to produce the force in the right direction. So I think that that's a cool, definitely way to look at it is if you cannot walk right, there's no way you can sprint correctly.
Yeah. Well, I've got people my age wanting to go, ask the guy this question. Okay. Is there a certain age? Maybe I should phrase it differently.
Okay.
When you get to a certain age, can you still get quicker? Or is there a line of diminishing returns to where it's like, you're never going to be as quick? So for instance, if I came to you tomorrow and said, I need to get quicker, is that possible? Or is there a certain age where the high, the quick twitch muscles won't get quicker?
I would say my answer is yes, you can, but you have to determine where it is you're trying to get quicker at.
Yeah.
So in terms of if I'm trying to get to a ball, if I would say, middle age, 50, 45, I may need to use my brain to think about where I'm trying to be before I get there and what position I need to be in when I get there.
Mm.
And that's going to allow me to be quicker, right? So using the mental processing and the experience of 10, 20, 30 years of playing that sport to be quicker than somebody who might naturally just be more athletic than you, right? And then for the younger age groups, you can definitely make them quicker, but if they don't know what they're doing, they may make a quick move in the wrong direction. And you've seen this before where it's like, well, you stepped away from the ball before you went to go to the ball. So you were quick, but in the wrong direction. Your decision
Mm-hmm.
making was wrong. So I feel like it's really just specific to what that person needs to get done and what sport they play. So whether it's tennis, basketball, I would say, flag football, cross country, 5Ks, you can get quicker at any age, but you need to be specific about where your deficiencies are, address those, and then also realize your strengths. Everybody has strengths at a particular point. So when I play football with, I would say young kids now, I always mess with them. I say, I got t-shirts older than you. And they look at me and they don't realize why I say that. And it's because I'm trying to mentally establish dominance over them, like kind of immediately. Even before, I know they're more athletic than me. They're faster than me.
Yeah.
But when I line up against them, I'm like, hey, I can be quicker than you because I know what you're going to do.
Right.
So I feel like there's kind of a bilateral movement of you definitely have to work your body and be better at strength training, be better at balance and movement, coordination, all those different pieces, but also mentally really sharpening your iron and saying, hey, like, how do I get there and read this person before I need to be in that position?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like a maestro or like a master of
Right.
karate or something where it's like they can see the moves beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, the power of anticipation. And I guess we can use Larry Bird wasn't very quick, but he anticipated and he was in position. And something that we talk about all the time in tennis, you hit this shot, what do you expect back? And like you said, what position do I need to get my body in to perform my next shot? I love that. So you play Division I football at South Florida. I want to give people some of your background.
Go Bulls, go Bulls.
There you go. Defensive back, was that your position?
Yes, sir. Strong safety, a little bit of corner, and then a lot of special teams.
Okay, so that's a ton of backpedaling and opening up your hips, guarding the receiver and so forth, defending the receiver.
Yes, sir.
Was that fun, or would you have rather been a wide receiver?
I played offense up until 11th grade. And
Okay.
then when I realized there was only one ball, I was like, wait, I'm only going to get the ball, 5 to 6 times a game. How can I be involved?
Yeah.
And I realized that what my team needed was, a defender that was able to contribute every play. And I just wanted to play. I just wanted to play the game. And a lot of times on offense, you'll run a route or be somewhere and the ball's not coming to you. So you're just not as motivated. Where on defense, I was able to really find myself and take my energy and effort and passion and teamwork and just all the different things that were besides my athleticism and bring it to the team. And that's really where I found my home on defense. Covering receivers is, I would say, probably one of the hardest things to do in football. Nothing against, any other position, but they are the fastest, quickest guys on the field. And our job is to react to the fastest and quickest guys on the field. So
Mm-hmm.
it's always a fun kind of cat and mouse game. It's never the same thing. And I feel like it keeps the game fun. A lot of times offensive players don't realize half the game is defense, right? So as much as you're on offense, there's somebody playing defense against you. Otherwise, like the sport doesn't work. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
just think it's always cool when I tell people I play defensive back. They're like, really? I'm like, it's half the game. Like, honestly, it really is. So
What is that adage? Great offense is a great defense, or a strong defense, or the best
what
offense is a strong defense. Yeah. Yeah.
And, offense has its place and it's definitely very, very important, I would say for all sports, but I think we all know that when it comes down to it, if you have a standout defender or, somebody who can really just stop people, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, you have great fielders, like it's like, man, I had an amazing hit, but he just snagged it out the air, right?
Right.
Like, what are you going to do? Yeah, it was a great hit,
Yeah.
but that outfielder snagged
Right.
it down 250
Yeah.
yards. I'm sorry, 250 feet.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned baseball. That's the only sport that the defense starts the action.
Hey, touche.
Yeah, you mentioned talking about going backwards. I had a basketball coach. We were doing the slide drills, defending back and forth. And he said, do you realize the guy with the ball is running forward and you're backpedaling and you're sliding sideways and how important that is? And just I had a couple coaches where I just hated every day. It was the slide drills back and forth, back and forth. Well, you do it so much, it becomes second nature. And it's the grind that gets you better. And I always thought about that. It's like, you know what? You look at hockey players, their movement, they move backwards so fast on a kitchen knife. And you know what I mean? That's pretty amazing what they do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, interesting fact about me. My first sport was actually hockey down in South Florida. So I did play a lot of different sports, but hockey was my first sport that I ever played. The Mighty Ducks came out like kind of about that time, and I just wanted to be a Mighty Ducks player. And I told my parents, I want to play hockey. They're like, what?
Okay.
You don't want to play baseball or football? I was like, no, I want to
Right.
go play hockey. So
A lot of
I do
ice in
know.
Florida.
Yeah. No, so there's a place in Florida, right in Pines, Florida, that had a hockey rink and a boxing gym above it. And my mom would
Okay.
go to the boxing gym, and my mom and dad would go to the boxing gym, and I would go down to the hockey rink, and that would be like their workout for the day. They'd go do that, and I'd go play hockey, and that's what I did for a year or two before I switched to baseball and basketball, all the other sports. So
hockey was your first sport.
hockey was my first sport, and I still to this day, when I go to the ice skating rink with people, they're like, you can skate. I'm like, yeah, I was 6 years old when I learned how to skate.
That's
So
awesome. That's really cool. I thought it was, the sport of hockey. How great is it that you're in a bad mood or somebody makes you mad that you can legally take them out into the boards?
sure, for sure.
So then you started playing baseball after that?
Yeah, I went to baseball after that, was a catcher. Loved catching just because I was involved in every play.
Yeah.
And then I had this pitcher named Chris, and we would purposely let people get hits to get the runner on third base and get them out. So he would purposely pitch it low. I would let it go between my legs. I would turn around and we would do a pick out basically at home. And that was like our number one play. Now this is youth baseball, back in the 90s, but
Yeah.
that was like our number one play. If somebody got a hit, let him get to third and we'll get him out. And he would just pitch it between my legs. I would turn, immediately run back, pick him out at home because their coach was home. And eventually coaches started holding their runners at third. They're like, don't run. They're going to pick you off.
That's awesome. I've never heard of that.
Yep. So that was my little baseball, time frame. So
Now, did you hit well?
yeah, I did. My dad used to walk into the park and be like, oh, well, I can hear when you're hitting. I'm like, all right, perfect. That's great.
Good.
So I think the encouragement is that I played multiple sports as a kid. And I think that's something that's also a question of like, what should I do? Should I specialize my kid? And I'm like, at some point, you just have to let your kid do what they want to do up until they've really decided where their path is. 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, like all these sports, like the kids are supposed to experience that. And that's the one thing that I do encourage parents to do. Like, it's like, I can't come to training because we started soccer. I'm like, all right, cool. Don't come. I'd rather them do soccer and practice a different sport if they're playing baseball because they're going to get that, kind of around the horn, experience. So.
Mm-hmm. But I had a parent ask me one time, why were we doing footwork drills, like with the ladder drills with 7-year-olds? And I said, well, we're going to do some of this hopping, skipping every practice because I believe you build a better athlete. You build the athlete who can do the particular sport. So you mentioned year-round sports. Did you ever do year-round sport before a teenager?
My answer is going to be no. My brother did get into travel basketball and was pretty serious with that, but year-round sports was, I would say, a luxury. All of the kids now who expect it, there's times that I'm like, do you realize your mom took you to and from like 40 practices in the past month and you're still gonna like talk back or like not do your homework or like not listen? Like, I'm so shocked because it's now the expectation that a kid is doing a year-round sport and in training year round, where when we were coming up, it was in the neighborhood, it was in the yard, it was just outside playing, riding our bikes. It was very natural for us to do things year round, but it wasn't so specific to a team or a sport. So, did we do year round sports? Yes. But every sport had a season. When it was
Mm.
football season, it was football season. And after that, we didn't like do football until, we were playing in the yard with our friends, or maybe it was a Super Bowl or something. So it did morph to that as we got older, where when I got to high school, like we did lift year round and, speed training and football, but nothing like it is today. Nothing like it is today.
I had a 10-year-old this summer. I asked him on Thursday what his plans were for the weekend. He told me he had a baseball tournament. And talking with other people, it's more the organizations holding these tournaments because the kid would have played 5 baseball games in 2 days in the middle of July, whether he wins a ring or a trophy, whatever. And I thought, whether he played it or not, what's that 10-year-old really gain from playing 5 baseball games in 2 days in July? Maybe just, I look at that, it might be too hot for the kid in long pants in July here in Atlanta. It
Yes, sir.
might turn him off, but at the same time, he might have really had a great experience. But I kind of fault the organizers because it's a big money maker for them to do that, to get 10 teams in at $700 a team. But it's I guess I see the burnout factor too soon. Young ages like that.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that, and I think that for each parent and each family that they have to just sit down and have an open conversation. And I remember even when I first met you, and you were just the person that you are. You always used to mentor me when I was at DBAT. When I was kind of first starting as a business owner, and you used to always ask me like, "What is it that you want to do?" And I'm like, nobody ever asked me that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like as a business owner, normally it's like, "Hey, how can you help me?" And I just appreciate you for
Oh, good.
taking the time to do that, because when you used to ask me that, I would like give you an answer that was like, "Oh, I'm gonna just answer him right now." But then I'd go home and be like, "Do you know what happened to me today?" And my wife would be like, "What?" And I would be like, "Rob asked me like what I wanted. Rob really asked me what I wanted." So I feel like just the fact that you did that for me as an adult, if our parents can do that for their kids and really sit down and say, "Look, no pressure. What is it that you want?" And that kid might be like, "You know what, mom? I really don't want to go to that baseball tournament. I just want to hang out with you or go to the pool." Like, if that's what they're expressing, we do want to push them. But at the same time, like those moments that we get as parents when kids are young are very far and few between. And I just think that that's something that's very important as well. Of the parents needs to definitely push and give their kids clear expectations, pressure, and put them in situations that's going to challenge them. But they also need to build a relationship of trust where it's like, "Hey, look, like if you're not feeling it today and you don't want to go to practice, I'm going to let you make the decision and tell the coach, 'Hey, look, they're not 100% today and they only give 100% when they come to practice. So I'm going to keep them home and let them rest and recover mentally, emotionally, physically.'" Like, we don't know what these kids are going through nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, like I said, refer back to that moment that you used to ask me those questions when I was an up and coming business owner of, "What do you think about this? What is it that you want?" I'm like, nobody ever asked me that.
Yeah.
So I feel like the kids and athletes sometimes don't get that grace.
Yeah. Well, I see it with, I have seen it in tennis, but usually it's swimming. And sometimes in baseball, kids get burned out. And then you wonder why that, well, because the kid was good at their local swimming in the summer. Now they go to county and do pretty well there. Now they're swimming at 5 a.m. I'm like, man, 5 a.m., anything other than sleeping is a commitment.
Yeah, oh, 100%, 100%.
Did you ever get a participation trophy in any sports you played growing up?
That's an interesting topic. I would say no. I think I did get a participation trophy in the spelling bee, maybe when I was in third grade,
Okay.
but I won fourth and fifth because I didn't want the participation trophy. I was like, it says participant. I was like, "Dad, I don't want this."
Yeah.
I like gave it back to him. Like I didn't want a participation trophy, but
Yeah.
I would say that was probably the only thing. And then when we did like chorus or plays, they would give everybody a little like medal at the end. But in terms of sports,
Yeah.
I would definitely say no. Like if you
Yeah.
didn't win, like that was it. And then Easter egg hunts were rugby games. If you want to go on an Easter egg hunt, like I'm gonna tackle you for your eggs. So participation trophy, no.
Yeah. Okay.
We were stealing eggs from little kids.
Yeah. Uh, and it's funny because when you see these action figures that kids have from every sport, I'm like, if you ask the kid, what was that for? Oh, when I played for the Little Tigers. It's like, that's all they can tell you. They just played. I want to look at that award and say that was a significant victory. We beat this team, blah, 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 blah. And then usually if the team wins, they can still tell you their teammates, 20 years down the road.
Yes. Now I'm gonna tell you this as well because I have two very high performing sons, and I know that there's people on your podcast that may have, athletes that are new, athletes that are in the middle, and very high performing sons and or daughters. As you know, I work with male and female athletes, all different levels. When it comes to trophies and winning, that's a very small percentage of people, right? So when I think about the sport of baseball or soccer or basketball or football or lacrosse, there's 1 to 2% that are going to be really, really, really high performers. And I believe where my company and where me and a lot of the coaches that I work with have become successful is we're able to create a great experience and environment for the other 98%. And I think that that's where the participation trophy comes in. But there's other values in sports that go beyond winning. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, obviously it's a longer conversation, but even when you look at businesses that are hiring and CEOs and you look at colleges, they're looking for very well-rounded people who know how to handle conflict, who know how to work with people they may not agree with, who know how to go into an environment that they've never been in and learn and be able to explore that. So I feel like sport has a very specific purpose. Yes, of course, there are going to be kids like, my kids and other kids that have 100 medals. But there's another 98% of kids who showed up to practice when they were nervous and were scared, and that's just as important, right? Or you know what, had a game that they lost and went back to practice, or won and still went to shake the other team's hand and say, you know what, y'all did a good job today.
Mm.
Like that's a skill in itself that I feel like sports may be missing now, is that we forgot like
Yeah.
the middle ground. It's either, oh, you lost or you won. And it's like, well, what about the fact that these kids all showed up to practice all week and gave their effort and got home late and had to do homework that was this and missed their friend's birthday party, but they're here. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's what did they learn? What was that life lesson from it? And I'm guessing when you were in the corporate world, the small frame that you were in when you interviewed, what was it like being a student athlete? Or are you still competitive or are you disciplined and so forth? And those are when I was in the corporate scene interviewing, those are easy questions.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And, just I would say in general, athletes are not seen as, scholars per se, right? But you know, I was able to blend both worlds and be able to see both sides and say, hey, look, like, yeah, maybe I don't have the most perfect grades. Maybe I'm not the best athlete, but the majority of people are in the middle, right? And I think that that's an important piece to say, okay, well, how can I be a student athlete? What does that look like for each individual player, whether it's a boy, girl, different sports? All the sports are demanding in different ways. And I feel like, as long as you're able to identify that for the athlete and the parents who are supporting them and the family, and I would say extended family friend group, and make it, worth it for everybody, that it's a positive experience. It's a net positive.
Right. So we're talking life lessons, dealing with not just what I learned from winning, but losing. Give me your worst defeat in any sport as a kid.
I would say this. If I was going to lose, I like to lose. So if I like to lose, it's like 20-0. I'm cool with that. There was a time in a football game that the score was 0-0 the entire game. This was in 7th grade, and we ended up kicking the ball on a punt, and the kids scored. We missed some tackles. They scored. The clock goes off, and we lost by basically 1 touchdown, right? And that was probably the worst feeling for me, that it was like we were so close.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just 1 mistake. Another time in high school, we were in the semifinals of 6A football down in Florida, which nothing against any other state, but Florida football at that time, 2005, 2006, was probably the best that there was in the country. And we were in line to go play the West, which is Northwestern, for our next game. And we ended up losing by 1 field goal in overtime. And it's just those close losses for me are just worse than getting blown out.
Yeah.
So, everybody's a little bit different, but I like, my losses to be in my hands, and I don't like it when somebody else is in charge of like us losing. So it was just, those are probably the toughest losses, the close ones, where you're like, you've worked so hard and it's just like one thing that you could have done or one mistake somebody made, or you're like, man, should I have stayed another 10 minutes at practice? Like, did I leave too early? Like, you really take it inward and you hold yourself accountable for that. So those are the tough ones.
Yeah. Did you have any influential coaches, especially when you had a tough defeat like that, to say something encouraging, or do you remember any of that?
I would say, yeah, I had definitely a big community around me. My mom and my dad were huge supporters. My brothers were huge supporters of everything that I was trying to do, athletically and academically. I had a church that was just really supportive all around, not only for me as a person, but of just our community and everything. So it made it to where I definitely feel like I had the support that I needed. And I had Coach Palmieri, I had Coach Greg. People are not going to know who they are, but they were always influential to me. But, mainly it was my family, my parents, my church, obviously the direct coaches. And then when I got to college, I played under Jim Levitt and Skip Holtz. Skip Holtz is Lou Holtz's son. And for anybody who has to, like, Lou Holtz literally sounds like he does in the game and on TV in person. It was kind of crazy to see that. But those coaches definitely led me, to where I need to be athletically. And, nowadays I have mentors like you and, just business coaches who are constantly supporting me and reaching out. So big thank you to you. And,
Yeah.
like I said, the guys at DBAT and Jerry Smith and just all the guys
Yeah.
who have, throughout the years really supported me. My business partner, JR, him and I have been friends since probably the year 2000, 1999, because we met in fifth grade. So he's been my business partner for over, 25 years and a good friend of mine. I've got
Nice.
long-term friends. So it's a conglomeration of people who continue to just, be there for me and my family. So
Nice. You mentioned Lou Holtz. Did he come around practice and hang out? Because he was retired when Skip was head coach, right?
yeah, yeah. Oh, he came to two-a-days when we were starting to act like we were tired.
Act like we were tired.
And, he was like, gave us a little talking to. So all positive, but, we needed a little talking to.
That's awesome. What a great man he was.
Yep, yep. Touche. Rest in peace.
Yeah. So I ask you about your worst defeats. What's your greatest victory in high school?
Greatest victory, I would say, is probably the first time we made it to the playoffs, because we had 2 years that we were like 0-2, 5-6. We didn't make it to the playoffs in high school for our first few years. And then my senior year, we ended up going 10-0. There was a hurricane, funny enough, that came my senior year, 2006, in Florida. This is right around the time of Hurricane Katrina. So our last 3 games my senior year were actually canceled.
Mm.
And we were so good that they actually credited us those 3 games to put us in the first seed. So it was one of those situations where, like, to be in the position of having 3 losing seasons and then coming out our senior year being 7-0 and then losing our last 3 games to Hurricanes, and then them crediting us those games was a huge
Wow.
win. We were holding teams to negative points because of sacks and safeties. So basically we had a negative point differential.
That's
So
huge.
they ended up giving that to us.
Wow.
So that was really cool. That was Everglades High School. Fun fact, I played a high school ball with Joe Brady, as
Nice.
you guys know, who is the offensive, coordinator and now head coach in the NFL.
Bills.
So he
Yeah.
played with for the Buffalo Bills. So
Yeah.
he played with us in high school. He was side by side with us. So shout out to him. And then another guy named Jovan Gopi, who's the sack sensei, who works with a lot of defensive linemen. He was, on our football team and in our choir. And I mean, honestly, just an endless list of guys like that I played with in high school. And then the college list goes as well. Jason Pierre-Paul, BJ Daniels, Nate Allen, just a whole bunch of guys that were just, really great at football, but also great people. So in college, I did get to 2 bowl games after walking on. We went to Meineke Carco Bowl and International Bowl in 2009 and 2010.
That's pretty neat. You mentioned 2006. Was that the year that, like, 3 straight weekends there was a different hurricane?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was a real thing down in Florida. Hurricanes. Yes, sir.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I tried to buy a chainsaw that November here, and a guy at Home Depot laughed at me, and I said, "You don't sell chainsaws?" He said, "Every chainsaw from Washington D.C. south is now in Florida." I'm like, "Oh yeah, they had some tree damage down there."
yeah, no, it was 3 weeks off of school and just it was really devastating. Obviously, you guys know Hurricane Katrina, and then obviously recently some of the hurricanes that have come through Asheville and
Yeah,
these places. But it is a real thing. It's
yeah,
definitely a real thing.
yeah. So, when you said that you play Division I football, what is a takeaway, the difference of, playing high school football? What is the most revealing thing that obviously everybody's bigger, faster, stronger. What's the greatest thing that you learn from playing Division I football?
Well, first off, so Division I sports in general is a whole different like level from the student athlete's perspective and having to go to class and obviously the athletic demands. In 2007, I believe, was when Title IX was enacted, when women's sports had to be specifically equal. You had to have the correct number of women's sports to men's sports. And I would say my biggest takeaway from Division I is that all athletes are pouring their heart and soul, whether it's Division I, Division II, Division III. Honestly, all of them are giving 100% at all times. But the Division I experience is definitely different and a lot more pressure because you're under the spotlight. There's cameras everywhere. Like when I would walk around campus, even as a backup safety and special teams player my first few years, like everybody knew who I was. Like when I walked on campus, walked in the lunchroom, like that's a lot of pressure. And most of these athletes just don't talk about that part of it. The on the field is the freedom,
Yeah.
is what I would say. Like us playing and practicing and lifting weights is it's a freeing thing, but it's when we have to go into the study hall. It's when we have to walk into class and tell our teacher, hey, look, I'm going to be out on Friday, so I need the test on Thursday, but then that's all your classes. So now you're
Yeah.
like, wait, like when am I going to study? I've got practice. It's a whole, different ball game when it comes to that. You don't see your family at all. I missed 3 Thanksgivings barely because we had bowl games over the winter. I was home for Christmas Day, but that was it. You know what I'm saying? Like you're missing out on things. All your friends are hanging out, going to different events, we were in Tampa, so going to Busch Gardens. And I'm like, I've got practice. Like I can't do any of that. The off season, you're training constantly. So there's a sacrifice that has to be made to be, at the Division I level. And I don't see any sport, any level of sport, D2, D3, NAIA, but specifically Division I, like you're sacrificing everything.
Yeah.
That sport is your life. And that's it, straight up.
It's a job at that level, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And there was no NIL or anything back then, so it was blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
Kudos to the system for giving kids a chance now to at least earn some stake and earn some wage, whether it's a car wash or a coffee shop or an apparel line or obviously there's a big contracts too, but kudos to the system for at least giving them a chance. But
Yeah.
back when we were playing, it was just for pride. It was for just pure pride of your school, pride of your family, pride of yourself. The money that we were, being given for, scholarships was just enough to cover, food, car, like
Right.
parking, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And we'd get meals after games. That was it. But it was really for the school and for for the athlete.
Yeah. Yeah. Two things. My roommate was a soccer player, and we were done with classes by 12. That's a good thing. We had classes 8 to 12, whatever. And
Yes, sir.
we would always laugh at each other. It's like, go do your job. I'll go do my job. He's going to play soccer. I'm going to play tennis. And like, good work if you can get it. But it really is something that, when you talk about the money and so forth today, it's gotten just totally crazy. If there was a stipend, do you think that there wouldn't be all this going on? Like because there's really no time to go work, and the NCAA regulations wouldn't let you work to make money on the side. But if they gave a stipend, you think some of this craziness would have never been here?
Yeah, to a point, but it's really hard to put a value on the time and the energy and the effort. So I think that what happened is that it just got to a level of like, oh, well, let's just go based off of revenue. And when you do that for a college team, you're talking, it's like, wait, hold on. Like you went from one spectrum of zero,
Yeah, right.
right, to all the way to the other spectrum, and we never like regulated in the middle. So I feel like that's what's going to happen over the next few years is it will regulate. Obviously, as you know as well, NIL is moving down to high school and kind of the middle school age. And it's on the parents and the coaches and the staff and the teams to really get our kids prepared to how do I handle money, or how do I handle success? How do I treat the people around me, and really go with a holistic approach of like, yes, you have this money. That's great. But that doesn't absolve you from being a good brother or a good sister or a good
Right.
friend or a good neighbor or a good son or a good daughter. Or for some of these parents, it doesn't mean that you get to treat another athlete like they're lesser than because your kid happens to be that NIL athlete, right? Like you still need to treat those other parents with respect and with dignity. Even though their kid might be on the bench. Okay, well, they're showing up to practice and they're doing their work too. So I think it's a combination of how do we at least show respect to everybody, whether you make $20 million in NIL or whether you're making 25,000, right?
Mhm.
And I think that that's where we have to, start the conversation is regardless of how much money you make, there's still dignity and respect and decorum that has to be had for the janitors and the coaches and the equipment staff. And you don't get to be above any of that. You don't get to leave your trash on the floor and like walk by like, yeah, I don't have to pick it up. Like you're still going to have athletes, male and female, with dignity and respect. So I think that that's a big piece that I did just want to address with, the NIL and the money. It's like, okay, all that's great, but we
Mhm.
still have to be relatively decent human beings to each other.
That's well said. I think I'm going to take that clip right there and just send it to every coach across the country. That's perfect, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think, the real trick is going to be the coaches that our ultimate goal is to win the championship. Whether XYZ, you've made this, our culture is about the end goal. And, just kind of like if your parents are rich and this guy doesn't have rich parents, it doesn't matter. We're all here wearing the same jersey for the common goal. So that's what's
Yeah.
interesting to watch.
Yes, sir. And I think, championships are, far and few between. There's some people who have 8. There's some people who have played sports for years and have 0, right? And I think it brings back to the fact of, even when I watched you coach for years is, the fundamentals, the hard work, the discipline, the teamwork, the encouragement, and the community, at the end of the day.
Yeah. I want to ask you one question about when you were playing football. Of your opponents you played, who was the most amazing? Like, for instance, if you played against Deion Sanders, I know he was before you, but is there one athlete that stands out that, like, holy cow, that's like Randy Moss right in front of us? Who was the most amazing player you saw?
I would say one of two things. We had the chance to play against Louisville, and they had just amazing athletes across the board at a particular time. We were in the Big East, which doesn't exist anymore, but all of the athletes were just extremely huge. Like
Yeah.
all of the tight ends, like they were just huge because it was like a running league. So I would say that if anybody remembers West Virginia and the NCAA video game, uh, Pat White was just absolutely amazing to play against. Like you cannot explain how they moved. Another guy named Noel Devine was just awe dropping to watch because you think you could tackle him
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden he'd be gone. Guys like Jep Demps were just amazing as well. He played for Florida. And then I'm gonna honestly give my teammates at USF a lot of credit. BJ Daniels, Dontavia Bogan. We'll talk about Jason Pierre-Paul. We're just amazing athletes to see, play in person, like side by side, day by day. That was, absolutely amazing to watch. But, some of those guys from the other school, the speedsters and the guys who can move insane were just, absolutely amazing.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, and I heard that somebody's talking about, I don't know, is maybe Johnny Manziel as a rookie was doing pretty well. And then maybe it's Teddy Bruschi saying, well, the second year in the NFL, he's going to realize that the defense moves as fast as the offense does in college.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I would say like, the Louisville quarterback was Teddy Bridgewater, which
Oh,
people
yeah.
know him.
And Minnesota Viking
But
guy for a while.
yeah, Minnesota. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like when I explain to people, I'm like, no, I played against guys who were like pros. Geno Smith went to Miramar High School
Hmm.
and he still is playing as well. So we were around this level all the
Yeah.
time. You know what I'm saying? So they're like, not saying normal people to us, but like, it was like, oh yeah, like we see that all the time. So
Right.
they're amazing athletes. But I'm going to give credit to obviously football players, but all the other sports, getting to be a Division I athlete, the soccer players, the basketball players, I mean, tennis, volleyball. We used to go to volleyball games and these girls were hitting the ball so hard. The golfer, I mean, we had a golf team at USF, and these guys from 200, 50 yards out with a 3-wood could literally place it within, 8 to 10 feet of the hole, like, and be upset. And I'm like, dude, if I hit the ball, like,
Straight.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
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 We had tennis courts there. Like I said, the soccer players, track runners, just amazing athletes, across the board, and even better people.
That's really cool. I want to get back to your training, and so many parents that we know, and I hear when kids say, well, I'm doing some agility training now, and I know where they're going. Like, well, who are you training with? CJ. I'm like, oh, tell them I said hello. And, and it doesn't matter. It could be a 7-year-old girl or, 15-year-old stud boy. But I know there's so many pieces of the puzzle, from the training, the preparation, nutrition, and recovery that's going on now that you talk about on a daily basis. How is training different now than, let's say, when you were 14?
Um, First off, I would say accessibility. So the understanding that everybody pretty much now is going to be doing training in some form or fashion, whether it's YouTube training, whether it's training with their team, whether the team has a coach coming in and helping, or a private trainer or a training group, right? Everybody's doing training at this point. So that's probably the difference. Is what set me and some of my teammates apart was that we were doing the extra and the other people weren't. Where my challenge to athletes now, which is great for my business, right? If I'm going to
Yeah.
look from a business, like, everybody's training. So now it's like, how do you separate yourself when everybody has a private trainer? And it comes down to the diligence. It comes down to the effort. It comes down to the attention to detail, which is where we've now shifted of like, okay, you're coming to training and that's great. But even that is not going to separate you anymore, because the tide has just risen. So it's really now about, the mental component. It's about the technical component. It's about foundations. It's about finding, okay, where did you miss? Because you were trying to be so good at, 8 years old as a pitcher. Okay, how do I go back and correct these different things that are going to help you in the future? So a lot of it is accessibility, doing proper assessment and making sure that the athlete's direction is properly set. And then, everybody's busy. People have multiple parents have multiple kids, multiple sports. How do you execute efficient training schedule that's consistent and going to grow over time when you can come see me once a week?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that means now you have to do homework. That means now you have to do things at practice. That means you have to come check in with me. So it's transformed into a fully fledged like training program where we've got to address practice. We've got to address rest. We've got to address sleep. We've got to address, injury prevention. As you know, with some of these athletes, how do we keep you healthy? Because as good as you are, if you're hurt, it doesn't matter, right? So it's a combination of how do we merge and blend all these pieces, and who's responsible for them. The kids are responsible for being to practice, right? But they're relying on a ride. So now you show up late. Like, how do you navigate those waters?
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something there about sleep, and these kids. You hear kids, oh, I don't like to go to bed. And how important is sleep for recovery?
Most people are going to say it's number one, which is probably true. But just like with anything, you have to tee it up correctly. The message will not be received if you just tell your kid to go to sleep. That's not going to work, right? We've got to show them the value, and even in rest. So, okay, you're not asleep, but you laid down and you gave your body a rest. So we try to converge the two worlds of, okay, rest and sleep go hand in hand, which means, okay, if you don't have practice today, how do you actively recover and give your body rest? And then, are you willing to set a bedtime? Which means you're in bed, even if you're not sleeping. Are you willing to set a phone time, which means, okay, at 10:30, I give my phone away and then I can switch to reading. Like, even if you want to stay up late, I do it a lot of high school athletes who have homework till 1 o'clock in the morning. And then they have practice at 5. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay, well, either you need to skip practice, which most coaches don't want to hear, or you need to do your homework earlier and get it done. But how do you manage that, right? So it's an important thing that we just frame sleep and rest in something that's just as important as training. And if an athlete is overexhausted, I'd rather them do active recovery and go home and sleep and eat properly than come to training. And business wise, does that help me? No. But the athlete, it benefits them. So
Yeah. It's interesting, I was talking to a couple kids about serving and doing those extra things. And I always stress, like you've stressed daily, the stuff that you do that's difficult will pay dividends. And I was at a seminar talking to another tennis pro about 5 years ago that there are so many things set up for kids that kids just wait to be told what to do. Where when you and I were kids, there weren't so many things accessible forms that we went out and we just played. We learned through playing. Now kids are waiting to be taught so many of these things.
yeah, so I just think that there's a balance and a shift that has to happen. And, we definitely have to start with leadership and leading by example. So most of the time, you're going to have to get a kid to get started. But then it's digestible pieces of how can you transfer that responsibility to them in a way that doesn't feel intrusive, in a way that they feel supported. And it may take some time and it may take a little bit of, sacrifice on one's part on the front end. But like you said, on the back end, it's going to pay dividends, a lot if you're able to present it to them in a way that they can see it and grab it by the horns and take it and, really just, own it.
Yeah. Let me ask you, are you a fan of ice baths as a good recovery tool?
I love ice baths as a recovery tool, but I hate doing them.
I say,
I cannot stand doing them, and I know most athletes cannot stand doing them. They are great for what they're used for. Obviously, the cold release proteins and all the scientific stuff. But do I like them? No. Did we have to do them? Yes, we had to sign in and do them. Yes, of course. But it's just part of it, and I feel like ice baths are a tool. It's just a tool in the toolbox.
yeah,
They're not an end all be all. You
yeah,
know, it's a tool in the toolbox. And if you need ice, put ice on it. And that's it. Ice bath, get in 10 minutes and get out. And if you hated
okay,
it, oh well. And if you loved it, keep it moving.
yeah. I've done a lot of research, and I got a friend who has got some arthritis, and he bought a cold tub, and it really made a huge difference. And he was doing 10 minutes a day, and I've seen some studies talking about 3 minutes is all you need, and some people say you got to do a full 10. And well, if you only did 3, you at least did that. What's your feeling on what's adequate enough?
So I believe that up front, you have to just dip the athlete. I think that it should be like they get under the water, they come back out, step out, and then go back in, do it a few times, right? And I feel like you have to progressively build them up to it. Very similar to a plank where it's like, look, just do a minute, then take a minute off, then do a minute,
Okay.
take a minute off, and then
Yeah.
try 90 seconds, right? So I feel like if you build them up to it, they'll be much more tolerant to it. Taking a kid and putting them in an ice bath for 5 minutes straight is just going to traumatize.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Who wants to do that?
They're going to be like, I never want to do this again.
Yeah.
So, maybe make it, with the little kids, I start with ice bucket challenge. Something so simple where I'll take a bucket of ice and they'll stand there and I'll dump it on their head.
Okay.
Right. And they end up playing with the ice. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to introduce it. Right. And then all of a sudden, we'll do a water day and I'll dump the ice bucket in the water. And I'm like, get in there. You can't do it. They're like, I can take it, coach. I'm like, all right,
Yeah. Right.
we'll see. You can come out crying in 5 seconds. So there's definitely ways to introduce it.
Yeah.
But, with more like high level athletes, I just think it's necessary and you got to just
Suck it
kind
up.
of suck it up, whether
Yeah.
it's ice bath, e-stem,
Yeah.
some people hate stretching,
Yeah.
all that different thing.
Yeah. Well, and if that piece of the puzzle's missing, then like you say, availability, how huge is that for a team?
100%, 100%.
Yeah. Well, let's call this our little 100-meter stretch here, wrapping it up. Who's the greatest athlete that you've ever seen in any sport?
I'm gonna go with a person who I used to grow up watching, and I'm gonna say Tiger Woods and LeBron James are kind of like side by side, but I used to love Wayne Gretzky and a few other guys like that as well. Mark McGuire was another, athlete that I used to watch, Ken Griffey. But I feel like LeBron is probably like pushing some barriers right now in terms of his age. And I wish that when I was 19, 20, 21, that I could have seen the longevity that he has, like in my mind, because my assumption was just like, oh, like when you're 30, you're old.
Right.
Right. And I think that he's pushing that barrier right now athletically to be able to do the things that he does. Now, obviously, he's a great player, but for him to be the age that he is doing what he's doing is just, I think, very impressive to see. And then, like I said, Tiger Woods and a few other guys who are just, been great for so many years at the
Right.
highest level. Like,
Yeah.
doing it for 2 or 3 years is one thing. And you got Rory McIlroy, who's now, extending, those streaks, Steph Curry and a few other guys like that as well. So,
Yeah.
but I got to say LeBron, and then people may like it or not, but
Well, I respect the heck out of him because you don't just go, okay, at age 38, I'm going to start training so I can be 41 pretty soon. That's a daily commitment, 365. And you can't dispute that when you look at the guy's body.
yeah, 100%. So, and then, there's respectable guys as well that I know have retired, from Michael Phelps, just watching him win the Olympics over and over, Usain Bolt, and, some of the gymnasts as well, Gabby Douglas, just athletes who were just great for years and years and years. I think there's just ways that they can, that they've shown us that there's a path,
Yeah.
for longevity.
Now, this might be hard, so I'm going to give you a top 3.
Yeah.
So you've run track, you've played football, you've been around, you've played a lot of sports. What are the toughest 3 things to do in sports, in your opinion?
Number one, is gonna say show up, because there's that person every day who just is like, I do not want to go today. And that's just the reality in sport and work and life, is that we just don't want to do it all the time. And just showing up and being there and just saying, look, like, I'm just going to show up is number one. And I think that your presence is very important as a person, as a teammate, as a father, as a mother, as a, just coach, whatever it is. Showing up and being present is very important. So I would say that that's number one. Number 2 is going to be self-discipline, which is the things that you do when nobody's looking, the accountability aspect, where it's like, nobody's looking at me eat right now. Nobody's looking at me train. Nobody's here with me. What am I going to do? What level am I going to push this? So, like I said, showing up, accountability, and then I would say like passion and heart. I feel like you can see when somebody really loves what they do, and it's a really important piece of sport and life, to where like that passion and that energy has to come from somewhere. And that energy comes from within. It comes from, you caring about yourself. It comes from the people around you. It comes from the people who support you. It's an inner piece that exudes outward, to where you're confident in yourself and you know the work that you did, and you're going to show up, and you just really love what you're doing. And I feel like it's intangible. Like, you can really see when somebody shows up, is disciplined, and loves what they do. You're not like questioning that. You're like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, look at this person in business, in art, in, music. It's like, look at that gift.
Mm-hmm.
And it really does come from those 3 things, I believe.
Yeah. I love what you said there, because some people would just hear the word gift, like you're gifted. No. There's a lot of hard work and sweat and tears that nobody sees. So,
Yeah.
who's your all-time favorite sports team? Any sport?
Man, I'm gonna go Baltimore Ravens.
Okay. They won with some defense, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Baltimore Ravens. Just the energy and effort that they played with the sport that I played, being football, they were probably like my number one team that I did used to love and watch. And then, other than that, there's obviously just different sports that I used to watch as a kid, and whether it was New York Yankees or, you know, Real Madrid in soccer, like it's just dependent, or Roger Federer, like it's just really dependent,
Yeah. Hard
And
not.
obviously Serena Williams on the women's side
Okay.
was crazy.
Yeah. Hard not to like those guys and girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Do you have a favorite book?
I would say, I know it's kind of cliche, but the Odyssey.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
love the Odyssey. I used to love Greek mythology as a kid, and even in college, I took like 2 classes for it. But there's obviously a new movie that came out that I'm waiting to see. Summer's over now. Camps have done. We had 10 weeks straight of summer camps, serving over 1,500 kids in the Atlanta area.
Nice.
So, that's been amazing, but I am glad that school starts on Monday. I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you that. I'm just going to be honest. But yeah, the Odyssey by Homer, I think, is a really good book.
Is that the new one that's supposed to be out in IMAX?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. I think I heard Dan Patrick and Matt Damon talking about it. Dan Patrick said, you need to wear seatbelts if you're watching this in IMAX.
Yep. Yep.
Oh. All right. So Is there anybody in particular that inspires you or you look up to?
Yes, I'm gonna say, my wife and my kids definitely are an inspiration to me. My family, they're the reason why I go through what I go through, as well as, me taking care of myself. Looking up to somebody is just going to be, I would say, the greater good. I see the good in people, and I see that everybody just wants to be the best that they can be. And whether somebody's mean or unhappy, like I still can see the light inside of them. And I think that comes from my faith. And I do follow Jesus. He's, my savior, and I'll openly admit that, just like anybody else can say that they follow somebody or, listen to anything. But I feel like, the light that's inside of people is something that I can see. I can see that everybody wants to be a good person. And that's just something that I look forward to, is like when somebody is able to rest in the fact that, they did something wrong or right, but that, they're still loved, and that they're still doing the best that they can do. I think we're all doing our absolute best.
Good. Good. That's awesome. I love that. All right, last question for you. And,
Yes, sir.
and you might say the second one because of what you just pulled through the summer with. Would you like a rewind button or a pause button on your life?
I would say this, business wise, I would like a pause, but personally, I would like a rewind. I feel like there was just areas that I could be better in, and maybe that's the competitor in me, and maybe that's the athlete in me, but I'd like a rewind and do, something a little bit different, and, kind of go back and fix things like that. But business wise, definitely a pause where I can, sit back and really enjoy the fruits of the labor that we put in and the great experiences that we put for the kids and training, and also a chance for me to look forward to the upcoming season. I've got a lot of athletes starting football, starting volleyball, basketball season coming up, flag football. We've got cross country, like athletes that have been working really hard for their seasons. And I'm really looking forward to that. And if I don't ever stop as a coach, I kind of get lost and don't get to appreciate the hard work. I just had an athlete signed to Wheaton for volleyball. And it's just like all these things are happening. And I do like to take a pause and smell the roses sometimes, and, spend time with those families and, with my family as well. So,
Yeah. I didn't ask you this earlier, but I guess it's pretty gratifying seeing kids develop and get better and then do well and come back and say, hey, I did this and, signed here or whatever.
yeah, no, it really is. And it's a whole team that makes it happen, from staff to family to school. But these athletes are really talented, and I love Georgia for that, because we get a high rate of kids going to the next level and or competing at varsity level and getting school honors and players of the year and just different things like that. So we do our best, but our training program with Takeoff is top notch. And I think, after 15 years of doing this, like we've proven that we can, kind of compete with the best of them. But our
Yeah.
goal is just to get the athletes what they need. And, everybody's going to, succeed from that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time here, Coach CJ. And I want to
Appreciate
wrap
you,
up.
Rob.
Well, I appreciate you. And I want to wrap up with a couple of the notes I took down about, takeoff performance and what you guys do, talking about strength, balance, and explosiveness, and that no matter what age, we can all improve in that area. And I love what you're talking about. What position do you need to be in and the power of anticipation. So I think that will be huge for everybody in every sport. What you said about doing the extra, how that separates you. My mom sent me once this little thing out of the newspaper. It said the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little something extra.
Yes,
And
sir.
she gave me that years ago. I thought, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And then you talk about diligence and effort, and the three things that are so crucial: show up, self-discipline, and passion, heart. You got to love what you do. So anyway, I really appreciate your time again, man. I think this is great. And I think a lot of parents are going to benefit, and some athletes too.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your time, Rob. And obviously we'll catch up after this.
Yes, sir.
In terms of, my information, I'm assuming you'll put it out.
Go ahead. Give us a plug right now.
Yeah. So, my name's Coach CJ. We're Takeoff Performance Systems. You can reach us via email at takeoffperformance@gmail.com. We do take all inquiries. You can also go to our website, takeoffperformance.com. You'll find our information on there. Reach out to us. We work with athletes of any age, any level, men's sports, women's sports. We also do adult training. I have some of my best friends are adults that I do train right now, which is really cool. So, we're kind of open to anybody, and we're here in the Marietta area, but we also work with schools, parks, leagues, teams and everything. So I think it's important that we've been able to have our hand in a little bit of everything. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak. And I'm representing my company and my family and all of the athletes that are involved with Takeoff.
Oh, well said. Yeah, and I love that, the takeoff. I was kidding around, like taking off as an airplane.
Like a rocket.
There you
Yes,
go.
sir. All the preparation.
Show us that shirt real quick. I
Yes,
love
sir.
that
Yes,
logo.
sir.
There you go.
Takeoff Performance. Yes, sir.
All right, Coach CJ, appreciate your time again. And so Takeoff Performance, look them up online, connect with CJ. I can vouch. I've seen his training. They do top-notch work. So again, man, appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, Rob. We'll see you soon. All right.
All right. Yes, sir. And so for you out there, if you like this episode, please forward it on to another athlete or parent that will benefit from this. And also please push that subscription button as well as that notification bell. So till next time, make the most of your time and always hang tough.